All right, let's jump into this deep dive into Discourse on the Method by René Descartes. We're going to be looking at excerpts from this. Well, I mean, this guy's a philosophical heavyweight, you know?
He really is.
Some really big, like, groundbreaking ideas about, like, how we think and how we can even, like, know anything for sure, and even, like, how the universe operates. So get ready for some serious aha moments.
Definitely. I think a good place to start is with a bit about who Descartes was. So he was a 17th century philosopher and mathematician, and his discourse on the method is really fascinating. It's like kind of an intellectual autobiography. Like he chronicles his journey of questioning, doubting, and then ultimately rebuilding knowledge, but from like the ground up.
Really? Starting from scratch?
Yeah.
Wow. And what's so interesting is that he starts this whole journey as a scholar. I mean, he already immersed himself in knowledge. I mean, we're talking about someone who went to one of the most prestigious colleges in Europe.
Yes.
And just devoured books on pretty much every subject you can think of.
But instead of, like feeling super confident because of all this learning, he kind of ends up feeling disillusioned.
Yeah, it's a really key point. He wasn't actually like rejecting learning itself.
Yep.
He really loved knowledge.
Yeah.
What he was really questioning was this idea of just blindly accepting everything he'd been taught.
Right.
He wanted something more, a firmer foundation.
Yeah.
Something he could be absolutely certain of.
So it's almost like he's going on this intellectual odyssey.
Yeah.
Exploring everything. I mean, we're talking languages, history, poetry, math.
Yeah, all of it.
Even like alchemy, astrology.
That's right.
I mean, he's really searching for that unshakable truth.
He was. He was looking for that bedrock of certainty.
Yeah.
But it just seemed to evade him no matter where he looked.
And so this is where his skepticism kind of comes into play.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And it's important to see his skepticism not as this rejection of knowledge itself, but rather as this search for a more reliable path to it.
Right. It kind of raises this question that I think is relevant to all of us. How often do we just accept what we've been told without actually, applying a little bit of healthy skepticism?
Yeah.
Without thinking critically for ourselves.
Without questioning things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's really the root of where his skepticism comes from.
So faced with this intellectual crisis, this intense feeling of uncertainty, I mean, Descartes takes a pretty radical step.
He does.
He decides to basically just demolish all of his existing beliefs.
Wow.
And start rebuilding his knowledge from scratch.
Just wipe the slate clean.
Yeah.
Start over.
Yeah, it's like imagine wiping your mental slate clean and being like, okay, from this point forward, I'm only going to accept as true what I can know with absolute certainty.
That's quite a task.
That's a pretty wild idea.
It is.
And to kind of guide himself through this whole process, he develops what he calls this provisional moral code, this set of guidelines for him to live by while he's rebuilding his understanding of the world.
Exactly. He needed some sort of framework to guide his actions while he was figuring everything else out.
So a moral code. I mean, what were these principles? What did he choose to follow?
Well, there were 4 maxims.
Okay.
The first one was to obey the laws and customs of his country and his religion.
Okay.
The second one was to be firm and decisive in his actions.
Right.
Even when his opinions were uncertain, he decided he was just going to act with conviction.
Okay.
The third maxim was to focus on mastering himself rather than fortune.
So changing his desires instead of trying to change the world.
Yeah, exactly. Changing his internal world rather than the external world.
Right.
And then finally, and this was perhaps the most important to him, he committed to devoting his life to cultivating reason.
Okay.
And seeking truth. Above all else, he was seeking truth.
That kind of encapsulates his whole project, doesn't it?
It really does.
It's just this unwavering dedication to finding a really firm foundation for knowledge.
Absolutely.
But the question is, like, how do you even begin that?
Right.
How do you begin such a huge task? Like, where do you start when you've decided to just question everything?
Well, Descartes found his starting point in a kind of unexpected place.
Yeah.
His own consciousness.
Okay.
He realized that even if he doubted everything else, the external world, his physical body, even his own senses, there was one thing he couldn't doubt. The fact that he was doubting.
Okay.
That he was thinking.
Okay.
And this led him to his now famous declaration, I think, therefore I am.
And that statement, it's so simple.
It is.
I think, therefore I am, but it's actually like a philosophical bombshell.
It really is.
Because it shifts the whole focus, to the thinking self. It's making our own consciousness the most fundamental truth.
Yeah, it's the one thing we can be absolutely certain of.
It makes you wonder, have you ever just sat there and just been aware of your own thinking process?
Yeah.
And just been amazed by it.
Absolutely.
It's actually pretty wild.
It is.
And so from this foundation of the thinking self, Descartes, he embarks on this quest. He wants to prove the existence of God.
Yes, he does.
And he argues that the idea of a perfect being, a being that has all perfections,
Right.
couldn't have come from an imperfect being like himself.
Like us.
Right.
Yeah, it's this idea that something perfect can't come from something imperfect.
So he's basically saying that our very concept of perfection points to something beyond ourselves,
Right.
to a source that must possess that perfection.
The source of that perfection.
Yeah. And it's interesting, he uses his own imperfections
Yeah,
as a way to argue for this perfect being.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because he's saying, well, I'm not perfect.
Right.
So this idea of perfection must come from somewhere else.
And this emphasis on clear and distinct ideas.
Right.
Perceiving things without any confusion or doubt, it seems to have led him to the world of geometry.
It did. Geometry really fascinated him.
Right.
Because in geometry, he found this level of clarity and precision
Right.
that you don't often find in the messy physical world.
Yeah.
And that led him to some really revolutionary ideas about the nature of the universe.
Because he envisioned the universe as this grand, intricate machine.
He did.
Governed by laws of nature.
Immutable laws, yeah.
Right.
That can't be changed.
Yeah. It's like imagining God as this master clockmaker.
Yeah, setting the universe in motion.
Setting everything in motion.
And establishing these unchangeable laws that govern everything.
And then it gets even more revolutionary.
It does.
Because he believes that by understanding these laws, we humans, we can potentially become masters and possessors of nature.
Which was a very revolutionary idea for the time. And it really laid the groundwork for modern science, which is based on this idea of a universe that is governed by natural laws that we can study and understand.
And this mechanistic view even extended to how he understood the human body.
Exactly. He looked at the human body and he saw a machine, a very complex machine.
He really delved into the workings of the human body.
He did.
Seeing it as this complex machine, especially when it came to the circulation of the blood.
He wrote extensively about the heart. He compared it to a furnace.
Okay.
And the blood vessels to pipes.
Wow.
Meticulously mapping out, all the intricate systems that keep this human machine functioning.
So he was really seeking to unravel the mechanics of being human.
Yes, he was.
Dissecting our very essence down to the nuts and bolts.
Trying to understand how it all works.
But this pursuit led him to draw a pretty controversial distinction between humans and animals.
It did. And it's something that's still debated today.
Yeah. Because he claimed that animals were essentially complex machines, that they lack the reason and language and consciousness that we humans have.
Right. He believed we had this unique rational soul.
Okay.
That set us apart.
So in his view, there's this fundamental divide between humans with our rational souls and the rest of the animal kingdom, which he saw as just, kind of biological automata. But in light of, modern research on animal behavior, on animal cognition, I mean, how do those claims hold up today?
Well, it's clear that, Descartes' view of animals was very much limited by the scientific knowledge that was available at the time.
Yeah.
Today, we have a much richer understanding
Yeah.
of how complex animal behavior is.
Yeah.
Their capacity for learning, for solving problems, for even, expressing emotions.
It seems like the more we learn about the animal kingdom, the more we discover these remarkable similarities between human and animal minds.
And it's really quite humbling to think that, our understanding is always evolving.
Yeah.
And that we should always approach knowledge with a sense of humility.
And an openness to new discoveries.
Exactly.
And it highlights the importance of questioning even those long-held assumptions.
Just as Descartes encouraged us to do.
Right.
So, although his views on animals might have been limited,
Yeah.
his work did play a significant role in shaping how we view biology today.
Right. So even though his specific conclusions about animals, they may have been superseded,
Hmm.
his work really helped to spark a deeper inquiry into the nature of consciousness.
And the boundaries between, humans and other species,
Right.
our place within this interconnected web of life.
And that's really fascinating. But beyond, his scientific contributions, he also grappled with some pretty deep philosophical questions about the nature of knowledge, truth, certainty.
He did. And his pursuit of certainty led him to develop this method of systematic doubt, which is a method that has implications not just for philosophy, but really for any field of study,
Okay.
where we're trying to gain some reliable knowledge.
So it's like he's providing us with a blueprint
Yeah.
for clear and critical thinking.
It is.
It's a set of principles for navigating this world of information and misinformation.
Especially today. I
Yeah.
mean, think about how much information we're bombarded with.
Right. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's like we're drowning in data.
We are.
Right.
And so his method is even more relevant now than ever.
And his method, it starts with a pretty radical step.
It does. It starts with doubting everything.
Doubting everything. I mean, that just sounds like a recipe for chaos.
Well, it's not about just rejecting everything outright.
Okay.
It's about having this really rigorous process
Okay.
of examining our beliefs and identifying those that are actually unshakable,
Okay.
and then building from there.
So it's not about throwing everything out.
No.
It's about taking a step back and really looking at the foundation of our knowledge.
Exactly.
Critically assessing it.
Descartes believed
Yeah.
that by systematically questioning everything, even things that seem obvious,
Right.
even things that seem self-evident, that we could arrive at a much clearer and more reliable understanding of the world.
So how does this work? What's the process?
Well, there are 4 key steps to his method.
Okay, 4 steps. Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's hear these 4 steps.
All right, so step 1 is to accept nothing as true unless it is presented to the mind so clearly and distinctly that there can be no doubt about its truth.
Okay, so we're basically starting with a clean slate.
Yes.
Our mind is free from any assumptions that haven't been like rigorously examined.
Yeah, you to clear out all the clutter,
Right.
all the preconceived notions, all the biases. Okay.
Okay, so that's step 1. What's step 2?
Step 2 is to divide each of the difficulties under examination into as many parts as possible as might be necessary for its adequate solution.
So breaking down those complex problems into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Exactly. So it's like if you imagine taking apart a complex machine, you're going to look at each gear, each spring, each component individually
Right.
before you can really understand how the whole thing works.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. So we've cleared out the clutter. We've broken things down into smaller pieces.
Now we can start building up.
Okay, what's step 3?
Conduct your thoughts in an orderly fashion, commencing with objects that are the simplest and easiest to know, and ascending little by little, as by degrees, to the knowledge of the most complex.
So we're building up our knowledge systematically.
Exactly.
Starting with the most basic, most evident truths, and we're progressing towards those more complex ideas.
Yeah, like laying the foundation of a building before you start, building the penthouse.
Right. You got to have that bedrock before you can have the skyscraper.
Exactly.
Okay, that's step 3. We're almost there. What's the final step?
The final step is to make enumerations so complete and reviews so general that you shall be certain of having omitted nothing.
So we're double checking our work.
Yes.
We're making sure we haven't overlooked any crucial details or made any mistakes in our reasoning.
You're reviewing everything.
Yeah.
Checking for gaps. Making sure we've considered all the angles.
So it sounds like a recipe for intellectual rigor and clarity.
It is.
And this method, I mean, it was initially for philosophy, but it seems like these principles could be applied to really any field.
Absolutely. Any field where you're looking for reliable knowledge.
Yeah.
You can use these principles.
Because it encourages us to think critically,
Yes.
to question, to really test our assumptions.
Against the evidence.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's a powerful tool for this world that we live in, right?
Yeah.
For figuring out what's true and what's false.
It is.
And for coming to those well-grounded conclusions. But how did Descartes himself use this method to come to his discoveries?
Well, by meticulously applying these steps, he was able to really challenge those long-held assumptions.
Okay.
He used this method to deconstruct those really complex problems,
Right.
to identify those fundamental truths,
Yeah.
and to build up knowledge, but systematically,
Yeah.
always seeking clarity and certainty.
It's like he was a master architect.
Yeah.
Just designing a blueprint for knowledge.
That's a beautiful way to put it. He wanted to make sure every element was in its proper place, that the structure was solid,
Right.
that it rested on a really firm foundation.
Yeah, and his work, it inspires us.
It does.
It shows us that we can think critically, that we can question what we believe,
Yes.
and that we can arrive at our own understanding of the world.
We don't have to just passively accept what other people tell us.
Right.
We can be active participants in creating knowledge.
It's empowering, isn't it?
It is. It's very empowering.
To know that we have this ability to really make sense of the world around us.
Absolutely. We have that power within us.
Yeah.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the mind of René Descartes. It's really fascinating as we go further into his work. You start to realize that he wasn't just a philosopher.
Right.
He was also a brilliant mathematician
Mm-hmm.
and a real pioneering scientist. And he actually saw all of these fields as interconnected.
Right.
You know, each one contributing to a richer understanding of the universe as a whole.
So he was really bridging those gaps.
Yeah.
Between, different disciplines, like a true Renaissance man.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, he really embodied that spirit. And this multifaceted approach, I mean, you really see it in one of his most significant contributions, his method of systematic doubt. And it wasn't just some kind of philosophical exercise.
Yeah.
It was a practical tool for uncovering the truth in any field of study. Really.
Yeah. So it's like he gave us this mental toolkit to navigate this world.
Yeah, this world that's just saturated with information and all these conflicting claims.
Yeah, it can be so overwhelming.
It really can.
But before we dive deeper into that method, I want to go back to something we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Descartes' groundbreaking contributions to mathematics.
Yeah, I mean, he's considered one of the founders of analytic geometry, which is this fascinating field that really bridges the gap between algebra and geometry.
Okay.
And his work really revolutionized mathematics. He found a way to represent geometric shapes, but using algebraic equations.
So instead of relying on just visual representations,
Right.
mathematicians could now use algebra.
Yes. To analyze and manipulate geometric shapes.
So that must have opened up all sorts of possibilities.
It did. It allowed for a much more precise and rigorous approach to geometry.
Okay.
And really laid the foundation for many later developments in math and physics. And his contributions, I mean, they went beyond analytic geometry. He made really significant advances in algebra, optics, even meteorology.
Wow. So his work really touched on so many different areas.
It did. He was a true polymath.
But let's shift gears a little bit and explore his ideas about the human mind and the universe we inhabit.
Sounds good.
I mean, Descartes is probably best known for his concept of dualism.
Right.
Which is this idea that the mind and body are distinct entities.
And it was a really radical departure. I mean, the prevailing view at the time was that, the mind and body were intertwined.
Right.
But Descartes, he argued that the mind with its capacity for thought and reason was fundamentally different.
Okay.
From the physical body, which operates according to these mechanical laws.
So he essentially drew this line between the realm of thought and the realm of matter.
Exactly. It was a very clear distinction for him.
But then that raises all sorts of questions.
It does.
Like how do they interact?
Yeah.
If at all.
Yeah.
How do the mind and body interact? What does that even mean for our understanding of consciousness, of free will? I mean, even the nature of reality.
Exactly. I mean, these are questions that philosophers have been wrestling with ever since Descartes put forth these ideas. I mean, his work, it ignited this whole debate about the mind-body problem that continues to this day.
So we're still trying to figure this out.
We are. It's one of the biggest mysteries. Really.
And it's a testament to his influence, right? That we're still grappling with these questions.
Absolutely. It really shows you how powerful his ideas were.
And while his dualistic view has been challenged and refined over time, it really laid the groundwork for modern psychology.
It did.
For neuroscience.
Yeah, absolutely. It made people want to understand the brain.
Right.
to understand its role in consciousness and sensation, in perception.
So it's almost like he opened up this whole new frontier
He did. He was a pioneer.
of scientific inquiry, just pushing us to delve deeper into the mysteries of the human mind.
And it's remarkable how his ideas continue to resonate
Yeah.
and to inspire new lines of research even today.
But amidst all these groundbreaking contributions, Descartes also faced his share of criticism.
Of course. I mean, anyone who dares to challenge, these prevailing paradigms
Yeah.
is bound to meet some resistance.
Right.
And Descartes' ideas, I mean, they were really disruptive.
Overturning centuries of
It-
accepted thought.
Exactly. And one of the main criticisms was that his dualistic view, this separation of mind and body,
Yeah.
it created this unbridgeable gap. I mean, if the mind is non-physical and the body is purely material, how can they possibly interact?
Right.
I mean, critics argued that his theory just couldn't account for that interconnectedness
Right.
that we experience between our thoughts and our emotions and our physical sensations.
Right. Because, I mean, it does seem like, our lived experience,
It does.
it defies that neat separation.
It does. It's very messy. It's very complex.
Yeah.
And even Descartes himself, I mean, he struggled to really fully reconcile these two realms, within his own philosophical framework.
So it's a reminder that even the most brilliant minds,
Yeah.
they grapple with these limitations,
They do.
these inconsistencies in their theory.
It's part of the process. It's part of, intellectual exploration, pushing the boundaries, refining our understanding over time. And it's also important to remember that he was working within a specific scientific and philosophical context.
Right.
Our knowledge has evolved so much since then.
Yeah, we know so much more now.
We do.
But even though some of his ideas have been, challenged, modified, the core of his message.
Yeah.
This emphasis on reason, on critical thinking, on the pursuit of truth. I mean, that's still incredibly relevant.
It is, in a world where we're, just bombarded with information from all these different sources.
Right.
The ability to think for ourselves.
Yeah.
To question what we believe.
Right.
To really evaluate the evidence, to think critically is more important than ever.
And so in a way, his legacy is a gift.
Yeah.
It's a set of tools, intellectual tools that empower us to make sense of this complex world that we live in.
And to arise at our own understanding of the truth.
Right, because we have that ability. We don't have to just passively accept what we're told.
Exactly. We can be active in our pursuit of truth.
Yeah.
We have that power.
And speaking of pursuing truth, I want to talk about another aspect of his work. This idea of a mechanical universe.
Yeah.
Which was a really revolutionary concept.
It was. It was really a game changer.
Because he saw the universe as this vast, intricate machine,
Yeah.
but governed by these immutable laws of nature.
Right. He believed that God was the ultimate clockmaker,
Okay.
who had set the universe in motion and established these principles that determined its every movement, its every interaction.
So it's like the universe is this perfectly engineered clock.
Yes, exactly, with each gear and spring playing its precise role.
Wow. And then within this grand mechanical framework, he saw the human body as a complex machine in its own right.
Yes, he did. He was really fascinated by the workings of the body. He compared the heart to a furnace,
Okay.
the blood vessels to pipes,
Wow.
and the nerves to these delicate threads, that are transmitting these signals throughout the system.
It's amazing how he applied this mechanistic view to the cosmos, to the human body, like seeing them as these interconnected parts of this larger divinely designed system.
Yeah, it's all connected in his view.
But this approach led him to make some distinctions that are pretty controversial today.
It did, especially his views on animals.
Right, because he argued that animals were essentially like complex machines.
Yeah.
Lacking the reason, the language, the consciousness that characterized human beings.
Right. He believed that they operated purely on instinct.
Okay.
And that they lacked the capacity for genuine thought, for feeling.
So for him, there was this fundamental divide between us humans, with our rational souls
Mm.
and the rest of the animal kingdom.
Which he saw as biological autonomy, essentially.
But, in light of modern research on animal cognition, I mean, how do those claims hold up today?
Well, it's pretty clear that Descartes' view of animals, it was limited by the scientific knowledge
Right.
that was available at the time. I mean, today we understand much more
Right.
about the complexities of animal behavior.
Yeah.
Their capacity for learning, for problem solving,
Yeah.
for even expressing emotions.
It seems like the more we learn about the animal kingdom, the more we discover these really remarkable similarities
We do.
between human and animal minds.
And it really humbles us,
Yeah.
to think that our understanding of the natural world, is constantly evolving.
Yeah, it's a process.
And that we should always approach knowledge with this sense of humility
Right.
and openness to new discoveries.
And it kind of highlights the importance of critically examining, even those long-held assumptions.
Yeah, just as Descartes encouraged us to do. So while his views on animals, they might have been limited, they might have been flawed in some ways.
Right.
His work, it really did play a significant role in shaping the development of modern biology
Okay.
and our understanding of living organisms.
So his emphasis on observation, on experimentation,
Mm-hmm.
on the search for these underlying mechanisms. I mean, it paved the way for a more scientific approach
It did.
to the study of life.
And although his specific conclusions about animals, they've been largely superseded by later
Yeah.
discoveries.
Mm-hmm.
His work, it helped to spark a deeper inquiry into the nature of consciousness,
Right.
into the boundaries between humans and other species,
Yeah.
and our place within this interconnected web of life.
It's really fascinating how his ideas, even those that have been challenged and revised, they continue to shape our understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Absolutely, they really do. But beyond his scientific contributions, Descartes also grappled with some really profound philosophical questions
Yeah.
about the nature of knowledge,
Yeah.
about truth,
And-
about certainty.
And his quest for certainty, this relentless pursuit of a foundation upon which all knowledge could be built. I mean, that's what led him to develop his famous method of systematic doubt.
Exactly. It was all about finding that solid ground to stand on,
Right.
that unshakable foundation.
Yeah. And that method, it has implications not just for philosophy, but for any field where we're trying to gain reliable knowledge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anytime you're trying to figure something out,
Right.
to understand something deeply, his method can be really helpful.
Because it's like a blueprint for clear thinking.
Yeah.
For critical thinking.
For getting to the heart of the matter.
Yeah.
And that's especially relevant today in this age where we're just bombarded with information.
Right. It's overwhelming.
It can be. It can be very overwhelming.
And Descartes provides us with this framework
He does.
for evaluating information, for separating truth from falsehood, for arriving at these well-founded conclusions.
And his method starts with this radical step, doubting everything.
I mean, doubting everything.
Yeah, it sounds kind of crazy, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, how can you possibly learn anything if you start by questioning everything?
Well, that's where the systematic part of his method comes in.
Okay.
It's not about just blind skepticism.
Right.
It's not about rejecting all knowledge.
Okay.
It's about having this really rigorous process for examining what we believe,
Okay.
identifying those beliefs that are truly unshakable,
Okay.
and then building from there.
So it's not about, just throwing everything out the window.
Yeah.
It's about taking a step back
Yeah,
and critically assessing the foundations of our knowledge.
exactly. Descartes, he believed that by systematically questioning everything, even those assumptions that seem the most obvious, that seem self-evident, that we could arrive at a clearer, a more reliable understanding of the world. And his method, it consists of 4 key steps.
4 steps. Okay. I'm intrigued. What are these steps?
All right. So the first step is to accept nothing is true unless it is presented to the mind so clearly and distinctly that there can be no doubt about its truth.
So it's about starting with that clean slate again.
Yes, exactly.
A mind that's free from assumptions that haven't been rigorously examined.
Yeah, you got to clear out all the preconceived notions, all the biases, all that stuff that can cloud your judgment.
Right. Okay. So that's step one. What's step two?
Step two is to divide each of the difficulties under examination into as many parts as possible, as might be necessary for its adequate solution.
So breaking down these complex problems into smaller, more manageable components.
Exactly. So it's kind of like, if you're trying to understand a complex machine, you're gonna take it apart.
Right.
And you're gonna look at each individual piece before you try to understand how the whole thing works.
Right. You got to see how all the gears and springs fit together.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've cleared out the clutter.
Right.
We've broken things down into these smaller pieces.
Now it's time to start building back up.
Okay. What's step three?
Step three is to conduct your thoughts in an orderly fashion, commencing with objects that are the simplest and easiest to know, and ascending little by little, as by degrees, to the knowledge of the most complex.
So we're building up our knowledge systematically, starting with the most basic, the most evident truths, and moving towards those more complex ideas.
Yeah, it's like, building a house. You don't start with the roof. You start with the foundation.
Right. You got to have a solid foundation before you can build anything on top of it.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's step three. We're almost there. What's the final step?
The final step is to make enumerations so complete and reviews so general that you shall be certain of having omitted nothing.
So we're essentially double checking our work, making sure we haven't missed anything, that we haven't made any mistakes along the way.
We're reviewing everything. We're checking for gaps.
Yeah.
Making sure that we've considered all the angles, all the possibilities.
So it really sounds like a recipe for intellectual rigor.
It is.
And clarity.
Clarity of thought.
Yeah. And while this method was initially developed for philosophical inquiry, it seems like these principles, they could be applied to really any field of study.
Absolutely. I mean, anytime you're trying to understand something deeply, these principles can be incredibly valuable.
Because it encourages us to think critically, to question what we believe.
Yeah.
To really test those assumptions against the evidence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's a really powerful tool for navigating the world.
Yeah.
For separating truth from falsehood.
Right.
For arriving at these well-founded conclusions. And I think that's something that's more important now than ever.
It is. But how did Descartes himself use this method, to arrive at his discoveries?
Well, by meticulously applying these steps, he was able to challenge those long-held assumptions. He was able to deconstruct those really complex problems and identify those foundational truths.
Right.
And build up his knowledge. But he did it systematically.
Okay.
Always seeking clarity and certainty.
So it's like he was a master architect.
Yeah.
Carefully designing this blueprint for knowledge.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Making sure that every element was in its proper place, and that the structure as a whole, rested on this really firm foundation.
Absolutely. And his work, it really serves as an inspiration for all of us. It reminds us that we each have this capacity, this power to think critically, to question what we believe, and to arrive at our own understanding of the world.
Yeah, we have that ability within us.
We do.
And that's a really empowering thought.
It is.
And that's a great place to pause for now.
Yeah, I think so.
And in part 3 of our deep dive, we'll explore the lasting impact of his work. How his ideas about the mind, the body, the universe, how they continue to shape how we understand ourselves.
Right.
And the world that we live in.
Yeah, how they continue to influence us today.
Exactly. And we'll delve into some of those criticisms a little bit deeper, and how his ideas have been refined and reinterpreted, in light of modern scientific discoveries.
So stay tuned for part 3 as we continue to uncover, the fascinating complexities and the enduring legacy of one of history's most influential thinkers.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of René Descartes. As we've been, going through his ideas, it's really remarkable how relevant his work still is today.
It really is. His impact goes way beyond philosophy.
Yeah.
His work influenced science, mathematics, even how we understand what it means to be human.
And I think one of the most fascinating things about his legacy is how his ideas really sparked this chain reaction of inquiry and debate that's still going on today.
Yeah.
Like, think about the mind-body problem.
Yeah.
It's a question that's captivated thinkers for generations.
Hmm.
And it really all stems from Descartes, this revolutionary distinction that he made between mind and matter.
Yeah, it's remarkable how one single idea
Yeah.
can have such a huge ripple effect,
Yeah.
prompting new questions,
Right.
pushing the boundaries of what we thought we knew. It really speaks to the power of a truly original thinker.
It really does. It's like he threw a stone into a pond, and the ripples are still spreading out today,
A perfect analogy.
influencing how we approach, fields like psychology, neuroscience,
Hmm?
even artificial intelligence.
Absolutely.
And his emphasis on reason,
Yeah.
on the power of systematic thought,
Hmm.
observation. It really helped to pave the way for the scientific revolution.
It did.
The revolution that transformed our world.
It's hard to imagine what the world would be like without his influence.
It is. And it's almost like he provided this framework for approaching knowledge, this set of principles for navigating the complexity of the universe and,
Yeah.
and understanding our place within it.
And he carved out a very special place for human beings. I think, therefore I am.
Right.
That really put the thinking self at the center of existence.
It's such a powerful statement, and it resonates so deeply
It does.
with our own experience of consciousness. It speaks to this unique capacity that we have to reflect on ourselves,
Mm.
to question, to ponder, to create.
And that emphasis on the power of the human mind, it really had a profound impact on later philosophical movements, especially the Enlightenment,
Yeah.
which really celebrated reason and human potential.
Yeah, it's fascinating how his ideas helped to shape the course of intellectual history, like setting the stage for these new ways of thinking about the world and,
Right.
and our role in it.
And it wasn't just grand philosophical concepts either.
Right.
I mean, he also delved into the specifics of scientific questions
Right.
and made some really lasting contributions to fields like mathematics and optics.
Like his work on analytic geometry.
Yeah.
It really revolutionized how we understand space and shape. Bridging that gap between algebra and geometry. And then his contributions to optics, it helped to lay the foundation for how we understand light, lenses, and vision.
He was an incredibly curious individual, and his intellectual rigor, it really led him to make these significant contributions
Yeah.
across such a diverse range of fields. He really was a polymath.
Yeah, he really was.
Yeah.
So even as we celebrate his achievements, I think it's important to acknowledge that his work, it wasn't without its limitations and its
Okay.
controversies.
Of course. I mean, every groundbreaking thinker, every innovator, anyone who's really pushing the boundaries of knowledge,
Right.
they inevitably face challenges and criticisms.
And one of the most common criticisms of Descartes is this strict separation that he made between, mind and body.
Yeah.
His concept of dualism, it creates this kind of philosophical puzzle. It's difficult to reconcile this division with the interconnectedness that we experience between our thoughts and our emotions and our physical sensations.
Yeah, how do we explain that interplay between the mental and the physical?
Right.
The way our thoughts can influence our bodily actions,
Right.
or how physical sensations can, trigger these emotional responses.
Yeah. I mean, those are questions that his dualistic framework it really struggles to address.
It does. And it's a
Yeah.
good reminder that even the most brilliant theories,
Yeah.
they have their limits, and that the pursuit of knowledge, it's this ongoing process
It is. It's always evolving.
of refinement and revision.
Yeah, and it's also important to remember that he was working, within the scientific and philosophical context of his time.
Of course. And our understanding of the brain, of the mind, of the relationship between them. I mean, it's advanced so much since the 17th century.
But even though some of his specific ideas, have been challenged or modified over time. The core of his message, the emphasis on reason, on critical thinking, the pursuit of truth. I mean, that's still so relevant today.
Absolutely. I mean, in a world where we're just inundated with information, misinformation, all these competing claims,
Yeah, it's
the
overwhelming.
ability to think for ourselves,
Yeah.
to question what we believe, to really evaluate the evidence critically. I mean, that's more important than ever before.
It is. And in that sense, Descartes' legacy, it's a gift.
It really
It's a set of intellectual tools that empowers us to navigate this complex world and to arrive at our own understanding of truth.
he gives us the power to not just passively accept information,
Right.
but to be active in our pursuit of truth. So as we wrap up our deep dives into the mind of René Descartes,
Yeah.
it's worth thinking about the enduring power of his ideas. His work, it continues to spark debate, to inspire new lines of inquiry,
Hmm.
to challenge us to really think deeply about the nature of knowledge, about the self, about the universe that we live in.
And his legacy is really a testament to the power of human reason,
Absolutely.
to the pursuit of truth,
Hmm.
and to this really enduring quest to understand the mysteries of existence. So as you go out into the world, armed with the tools of critical thinking, with this thirst for knowledge, remember the words of René Descartes. I think, therefore I am.
It's a simple statement,
Yeah,
but it's so profound.
is.
And it really holds the key to unlocking, the vast potential of the
Yeah.
human mind.
And we really hope that this deep dive into the world of René Descartes has sparked your own curiosity and inspired you to continue exploring this fascinating landscape of ideas. So thank you for joining us on this intellectual journey. And until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep seeking truth.